All right, y'all, welcome back to the War Room 2.0. We are here with a very special first-time guest of Jay Palacios. Jay, how are you, buddy?
Ooh.
Doing good, doing good.
Hold your applause.
Awesome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. A little applause. We don't have an applause button here. We have no budget for a soundboard, so you'll just have to take that for now. And as always, my co-host, Bert, we're trying to get Thomas back on. He's being held at gunpoint by TU fans, most likely. At this point, we'll bust them out eventually. But that being said, lots to break down from week 4. No, I'm just kidding. There's like 2 things to talk about, and then everything's in week 5. So we're going to kind of work our way through week 4, the few notable things, go into week 5, and then cover once again. We're going to have Bert's trademarked hate watch of the AP Top 25 poll. So when we get to that segment, hide your kids, and you'll be good. Yeah, guys, look, week 4.
Apologies for any language. As always.
Yes, we're going to look. This time we're warning them. We're being proactive about it. So, yeah. And look, talking about week 4, okay, a lot to talk about. And by that, I mean, not much. I mean, we're looking at Arch Manning flexing on a future accountant that works at Sam Houston. We're looking at North Carolina losing again. We're looking at Dabo talking all that stuff after a tough loss to Georgia Tech, only to get absolutely smacked in the face by Syracuse. Notre Dame having a nice get-back game to prove absolutely nothing. So, gentlemen, was there anything that stuck out to you guys from week 4? Where do we want to start in the 1 or 2 things we want to cover before we get into a monster week 5?
So I say let's just start with Clemson and Dabo. I think the waters from Georgia Tech were already murky. He was already kind of saying some things that got his fan base a little perturbed with him. And this past weekend was just bigger. He tended to make the fire, I think, a little extra hot for him. Clemson is a weird team right now in the fact that they have all these expectations that have been set by Dabo back when he was winning national championships, I guess maybe 2018, 2020 range. And now that we live in this new era of football, Dabo has consistently shown that he is not willing to get with the times. He's going to do things his way, and that's just how it's going to go. And I don't necessarily think the Clemson fan base is happy with that, and they want to be competing for national championships, and this past weekend knocked them out. So all that conversation this past week of is Dabo's time at Clemson done, I think it's much louder over the past couple of days. Now it's, I think this past week it was playful. It was just words that were being talked about, and now I think it's more of an actual legit conversation.
So when we're talking about Clemson in particular, and Jay, this question is for you, What do you think is the bigger problem? Do you think it's not capitalizing on the transfer portal and via NIL, but also recruits via NIL, similar to Jimbo Fisher problem from the early days of NIL? Or do you think it's more of a talent conversion to on-field product problem? Because when you look at their front 7 on defense and some of the talent they have at skill on the offensive side, even with some of these losses in the transfer or in the recruiting area, they still get some quality talent. And it seems to still, in my opinion, not be converted to on-field products. So when you're looking at this, do you see more of a, hey, you're not stacking your positions enough with talent, or do you see it more of a problem as we're not converting our talent to actual plays being made on field?
So I think it's kind of a mix of the two if you think about it, because if you recognize an immediate problem in kind of the modern world of college football, you can address that through the transfer portal. Dabo recruits well. Clemson has always recruited well and been able to get good talent down there. The problem is, it's not the way he's doing it doesn't make it a level playing field for Clemson anymore. Back then, if he had some deficiencies, likely other teams are going to have those same deficiencies because you're doing all of your own kind of homebrewed kind of team making, because there was no transfer portal NIL to get dudes in immediately to address those faults in a team. I also think this has allowed some of the more bottom-feeding teams in the ACC, so like a Syracuse, to go ahead, like Syracuse, to be able to go get good players that can now go to, like, they're not going to have the same profile as a Clemson. I don't think they'll have, like, I don't think you could sit there and say, like, the talent on Syracuse is equal to Clemson, but they can at least get a few guys out there who are going to give you a punch enough to where Clemson can't just sleepwalk through the ACC and beat up on, like, a few like, future post office workers.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and heck, Duke got hot for a minute when they had Elko.
Yeah.
I mean, Duke got a couple 3 and 4 stars at that point, and those guys got to be bookworms, and no one wants to do that at the D1 level. Bert, follow-up question. When you look at places like Clemson and Alabama, both of which have failed to meet expectations for their historic programs over the last 2 to 3 years, do you see the problem as more the programs not properly adapting to the modern era of NIL, or do you see it as now that the historic winningness of programs are less in value than they were, say, just 5 years ago, then there is, hey, just what are you going to pay me? What are you going to offer me? What kind of support do you have for me? And am I going to get playing time to keep my stock value up? You know, places like Texas Tech have come on really quickly by opening the pocketbooks, and you know, places that traditionally could not recruit as well as in Alabama. Now it seems that the fact that you can inject money into a program and get a quick turnaround very, very quickly from whether recruiting class or the portal. Do you think that this has honestly leveled the playing field with a lot of historic, I'm not going to say franchises, but college football programs that necessarily were a pipeline beforehand, and now that pipeline has got a lot of different paths it can flow through?
I think you're 100% right when you start talking about the level playing field. I think all of a sudden teams like the Texas Techs of the world, as you mentioned, they're able to go and get recruits and steal some of those recruits from those blue blood programs. You're seeing that especially in the SEC. I mean, there's no one team that is above everybody else currently. I think for a long time, it used to be Alabama was that program. And now you just see a bunch of teams that are kind of jumbled up in the middle. And it's hard to just, I think a prime example of that was this past weekend with Oklahoma and Auburn. Both of those teams were considered to be middle of the pack, possibly could be challenging for an SEC championship. But I mean, the only difference in that game is a missed call. Essentially a missed penalty. And again, like you were talking about, it's the NIL has allowed teams that traditionally aren't able to get some of that talent to at least consider coming to those smaller schools, getting that play time and getting rewarded for it.
Kind of piggyback.
Yeah, I mean, it's less about. I
was going to say, kind of piggyback.
Go ahead, Jay.
I think the transfer portal has made it to where I don't think you'll ever see another dynasty like Alabama. You got guys now, they don't have the depth they used to have. You used to have 5 stars, all 4 strings going down the line. But now, if your second or third string guy ain't getting the playing time he wants, he'll go to like a Memphis. And then you have a lot of these G5 schools and even more some of the bottom feeding Power 4 teams are littered with that kind of top level talent. And if they have a coach down there that can develop talent worth a damn, then I think you see a lot more upsets like this year with a lot of Group of 5 teams being able to knock off some pretty decent sized programs, including like Arkansas, like we'll talk about later.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think in ways it has leveled the playing field, but also it's brought instability to the playing field as well, right? We're talking about coaches having to recruit their own rosters again. So It's wild in some ways, but it's bought. I'll say bought because that's kind of what it is. It's bought a lot of crazy matchups on the field in a lot of close games that traditionally would not be close. I mean, you have teams like Georgia Tech that when they can retain a lot of their players that traditionally are getting up there their fourth or fifth year, but aren't necessarily so highly recruited in dollar value, such as a Haynes King, such as some of their receiving cores they brought back, some of their defensive talent they brought back. And if they can land one or two more guys, and now you've got it's like stacking a little bit of a mini dynasty for just getting to that 9 or 10 win, possibly knock off a big name level that programs like Georgia Tech haven't seen in years. So, you know, that's the positives of it. There's all kinds of negatives of it in regards to what goes on behind the scenes. But as viewers and fans, we definitely get to see a lot of the on-field product rise. And there's no longer this, we just got to wait for the Alabama-LSU matchup to see who's going to go to the SEC championship. Right now, it's more of it's open to a lot more teams. I mean, look, Vandy's getting scary. Okay, we got those guys chanting about deep water defense over there, and they've been in the corner since 2004. Okay, it's I don't know what's going to happen if those guys knock off a top 10 team again, like they did with Alabama last year. I mean, it's hard for them to act like they've been there before because they literally haven't. So it's gonna be scary if we get another, Vandy cult rising again. So watch out for that. But other notable things, guys, the Belichick era is up to a rough start. So for either of you want to take this, do you think this was more expected, given how bad North Carolina was in regards to a place before he got there? And this is simply he hasn't had enough time to get maybe the quality of talent. We know, I think he set the highest amount of transfer portal acquisitions in the offseason, but maybe they weren't the guys he wanted. Maybe this is kind of like a Deion Sanders first year at Colorado incident where, yeah, he made a lot of moves to get a lot of the stuff out and possible good players in, but do you think he's had enough time to get the right talent, or it's simply, hey, he got what he could to try to get guys to fit his system, and he just hasn't had enough time to actually make it a program yet? He's just trying to get through his first season. What do you guys think here? Where is North Carolina headed? Can they trust the Belichick process?
Well, I think the Belichick process doesn't necessarily apply at North Carolina. I mean, you're talking about moving from the NFL, where it's a free market draft pick kind of deal where your roster is essentially set every single year. And now Belichick is completely moving to a whole different ballgame. I mean, there's no direct operational type of deal that correlates the NFL and college football right now. So I think the whole Belichick hiring was just honestly, I think it's more of a publicity stunt than an actual thing that might possibly work. Now, granted, I mean, it's still his first year. He let him get some time under that system and kind of get him more accustomed to the college football waters. But I think he's always been able to go out and find talent that hasn't necessarily been the top of the list talent and turn them into something. I mean, he did that with like receivers like Julian Edelman and Wes Welker and running backs as well on the Patriots. So I think this year is definitely going to be one of those warming of the waters for Bill Belichick. We'll really get a sense of how things are going to go in North Carolina next year. If they continually struggle, I think Bill Belichick's tenure at North Carolina is going to end relatively quick.
So we talk about publicity stunt. Jay, what tells you more that this is a publicity stunt in regards to the North Carolina program and maybe possibly an effort to just throw in a big name that has a lot of historic NFL success to try to land recruits quickly for maybe a cheaper dollar than they would if they were to go to a different program because of, it's Bill Belichick? Was it maybe the 72 ads for the first game we saw before TCU that lasted about 5 minutes of that first drive of the Belichick North Carolina era? Or was it the 24-year-old girlfriend? Like which one? 24-year-old girlfriend, 72 promos. Like which was more of the hype that put us in this Belichick era of high expectations?
I mean, I think the high expectations just come from his work with the Patriots, but kind of going off what Bert said, it's a completely different beast. I mean, I think he's trying to tank right now for recruits, but I think he's going to realize you don't you don't get to tank for a first round recruit. Like that doesn't exist. So
There's no
you're
first,
just like it's completely different. There's 32 teams in the NFL. Sound real uneducated here, but like 32 teams in the NFL, how many college programs are there?
Hundreds.
Like, hundreds. And then Power 4 programs, there's far more than there is in the NFL. So you have to compete with all these different schools that have, frankly, some of them even better budgets than you do. There's no salary cap. There's none of that. So you have to compete with all these teams. So I think it's a completely different beast. I think he has a lot of off the field distractions, and these are kids. Like you're now working with kids. You're not working. Yeah, his wife is either the same age if they're in grad school or a little older. Yeah, so you're dealing with kids now. You're not dealing with professionals who've been through, like, say, an Alabama, a Georgia, and have kind of gone through like all the PR stuff and know how to kind of. You don't get to filter out as many of the idiots. Like, you now have to deal with all of that. You have to kind of sift through all of that. You don't have quite as much. You can't handle it the same way. You have to be much more handholdy, so to speak, and you can't just be as, I guess,
laying down the law as maybe his previous programs.
I would agree. And it's also just kind of the constraints of North Carolina. It's North Carolina. North Carolina's always been a mid team with about an 8-win team with a few years every once in a while where they'll hit a 10-win season or something like that and go to like the Sugar Bowl or the Peach Bowl or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what to expect from them in the years going forward, because this is much worse than like the last huge name to interject himself into a program this way was Deion Sanders. That was one of the biggest coaching hires when he went to Colorado in a while. And their first season was rough, but it wasn't this rough as what it is with UNC right now.
He had some coaching experience too. I mean, it was HBCU, and then I think some like high school coaching before that. So, but at least he understands also what it's like to recruit and keep people. He didn't come in with an NFL mentality. Belichick's just trying to run this thing like the Patriots, and I just don't think that's going to work long term, especially.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to recruit a Wes Welker and turn him into a 5-star or anything like that after you sign him, right? Like you do have to go after some of the best talent and then develop that even further, because that's what everyone else is doing. So you don't get any value in monetary wise as much as you do in the NFL if you go and find some crazy guy who was not looked at so much and you turn him into a great player, because the time you spent to go find that guy should have been allocated to, hey, well, we need to actually go get the best talent that we can turn into something even higher potential, right? Because all your man hours recruiting you have to budget them. It's time, but you have to budget like money. And I think Belichick is used to an approach of, well, okay, I'm gonna leave that to my other guys, but my efforts are going to be who are the guys that I can buy and flip like houses. That's another thing to keep in mind. I think his whole talent. So moving on. I think one of the other notable games from week 4 before we go to two more, but we'll go through these pretty quick. Florida, Miami. Florida's defense, this is reminding me of like the Texans' Lovie Smith defense from a couple years ago, to where they were playing their tails off to get zero reward every game. Like those guys coming away with blood in their knuckles and just like taking abuse, and only to watch their offense go 3 and out almost every series and get no reward for it. And these guys kept it 7-13 or 7-14 for like 3.5 quarters, only for the game to be broken out late. Florida's offense is about as productive as me on a Saturday after a long work week, which is not at all. So when you're looking at Billy Napier, what are the odds of him staying around at this point? Because, I mean,
he's gone. He's a dead man walking.
Okay, so since that was quick, What are the odds that he's out before the end of the season?
High. I think he's probably not going to make it past the Mississippi State game.
The only way I think he stays around is if they're trying to prevent basically like a hemorrhage of players to the transfer portal early. If they're trying to see if they can at least look for someone in the meantime and see if they can convince a few guys to stay around. But if they don't think that's going to work, I think I agree with Bert. If they don't determine that that's going to be a problem, they'll boot him, I think, after. If they lose to Texas and Texas looks like their first 3 weeks, if you lose to a Texas with no offense but a good defense, I think they might can him right there.
So,
if
I was Florida,
go ahead, Bert.
If I was Florida, I would already be shopping. And frankly, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they already are. Yeah. I would be announcing Billy Napier's firing and the hiring within a week. And at this point, I'm looking at some candidates like Dabo, to be honest with you. I think everything that's going on with Clemson, I think Florida should have been calling him up in the press conference. I think same thing with Lane Kiffin. I've seen his name thrown out there as well.
I think his name was thrown out there last year for a few jobs, and Florida was one of them, right?
Lane is always going to, with the success that he's had at Ole Miss, he's going to go to a blue blood program. Whether that's Florida or Alabama, with everything going on with the Boar, to be determined, but he's going to go somewhere. And I know Ole Miss fans, they know he's going to go at some point. It's just a matter of when. That level of success at that program is just not going. It's not going to go unnoticed by other programs.
I think another sneakier hire they could look at. He was in their building, I think last week. Alex Golesh, USF. That man has consistently turned USF into a team that goes toe-to-toe with big-name programs and half the time wins. So I think
if you can't beat them, buy them.
The only issue I think Alex Golesh might present is, remember, Billy came from a Group of 5 team in Louisiana. There might be some bad feelings about going out and hiring another coach from a Group of 5 team.
I think I would agree with that. I think that's a good option, but I do think they'll go for a known commodity due to Billy Napier coming from that Louisiana Lafayette.
And with a $20 million buyout, they'll probably have to do to get him out early, potentially. That could be a good low-budget option that's low risk, potentially high reward. Could be an option. There's also rumblings about potentially just, probably doing a little key bump real quick and hiring John Gruden, because why not? I would love nothing more to see that happen, because it would be so fun. I would want cameras. I mean, Bert and I were talking about this 2 weeks ago. We would want cameras in every room. We want Hard Knocks on steroids to witness that happen. I want to see him go full Chucky on a 5-star recruit and just see what happens. See if everyone jumps ship immediately.
They just got to watch out for that man's phone calls.
And emails. We need a firewall like thicker than the Great Wall of China. There's got to be, honestly, they may have in the contract, he's got to get off all social media, no emails, no internet. Dude, just sit in there with like 62 whiteboards and bring in the quarterbacks and just stay there.
Give him the Donald Trump treatment, where you just give him his own social media platform that only he sees and let him type it in. He can send it to himself.
Give him a bunch of fake followers on it so he thinks people are listening to him. So if he says something stupid, no one actually sees it. It's great. I love that idea. Okay, lastly, is Illinois the best team in the world? I'm sorry, Indiana the best team in the world, or was Illinois being ranked number 9 an absolute joke?
So I'm going to give Indiana their props for a second, because last year everybody came to the consensus that they deserved to make the playoffs, even though their schedule didn't necessarily have a whole lot of challenge in it. This season is a little bit different. Illinois is considered to – I think Illinois is a top 25 team, regardless of what happened a couple nights ago. I think Indiana's for real. They showed it against Illinois. The fact that they beat them 63-10, I think speaks volumes about how this program has to be taken seriously. Like I said, Illinois, I don't think anybody on planet Earth would agree that they're a top 10 team, but they are in the top 25, and to do that against another in-conference Power 4 top 25 team, it says a lot about where Indiana's going this year.
Jay, any final thoughts on week 4?
No, I will say, though, it was mighty corny of Arch. Absolutely just mogging on a future U.S. postal worker. I think that's truly unpatriotic, and I would love to see where that was when he was playing Ohio State.
He was not present. He was too busy losing brain cells because he was not getting any blocks from his offensive line, and he was missing throws left and right. So, yeah. Who does? I don't even know who TU plays next, but that's gonna. I mean, I'm going to be watching every TU matchup.
The final score is that this week?
Next week.
They're both on bye this week.
Brother, we're back to playing 40s football, baby. I mean, the punters are going to have a heck of a week. It's going to be great. I mean, at this point, we need both teams to run the triple option and the wishbone. Okay, I mean that's where we're getting at this point between the two. We're just going to forget about the forward pass in general. Let's just run triple option. Wishbone, wing tee. I'm talking like just we're doing the fundamentals for 4 quarters. The ending score is going to be 2-3, and it's going to be wonderful. Okay. Yeah.
One final note.
Oh, go ahead.
One final note on week 4 for me. I think this week established that we're going to have a lot of coaches on the carousel between Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, Sam Pittman at Arkansas.
Oh, yeah, that was a big upset. OSU losing to – who was it again? Tulsa.
I just see it. Last year was a little bit quiet in terms of the coaching turnover, so I think this year is going to be the mother of turnovers in regards to coaching.
Okay, fair point. Okay, moving into week 5, several, and I do mean several key matchups. You got the LSU and Ole Miss game. We've got, oh dear God, the first thing that comes up is USC and Illinois. We're not talking about that matchup. We've also got Tennessee, Mississippi State. We've got Oregon, Penn State, Alabama, Georgia. A lot of really, really cool matchups here. A&M and Auburn, that's another ranked matchup. So where do we want to start here? Oh, sorry, Auburn's not ranked. Forgot about that because they just lost to OU. My bad. But where do we want to start here? Which matchup? I'll start with Jay. Which matchup is most important or is most stakes high for you on this slated week 5?
For me or for college football?
Okay. In your opinion of college football as a whole, I know for you and me it's the Auburn A&M game, but
of course,
if you were looking at the state of the union of college football, what do you think is the most weighted matchup that everyone's going to be looking at this week?
Well, I'd say Bama and Georgia. I think this really determines can Kirby get that kind of Alabama monkey off his back, and can DeBoer go head to head? Is Florida State that good, or is Bama really just kind of in that decline and they're just not what they used to be? I think this will be a very telling game. DeBoer doesn't get to go like blow out and give back shots to Wisconsin. Like he's going to have to actually play some football. So I think this will be a very telling game either way. Is Georgia invincible and just going to just blow through the SEC this year, or is there something to Bama? I mean, I think this week will tell us a lot, kind of the state of the upper echelon of the SEC.
Bert, do you believe the Alabama-Georgia game is just as much a do or die for Caleb DeBoer as Jay? What are your opinions on the weights of this game?
Absolutely. I think Bama definitely has a bad taste in their mouth right now after everything that's been going on with Florida State. personally, I kind of believe Alabama is not as good as everybody thinks they are. I know there was a bit of a rebound with Wisconsin, and I mean, Wisconsin is not a great team. This past weekend, they lost to Maryland. Wisconsin is another coaching job that's probably going to open up in the offseason. And Alabama has gotten a lot of credit for that win, when in reality, I don't think it's that great of a win. I think Alabama's going to lose this game, and I think the Boar is going to be possibly on the way out simply because of it. The flurries are going to start.
Okay, fair point. Looking at one of the honestly, in regards to just the pure rankings, what will probably be the biggest matchup of the weekend between Oregon and Penn State. This will be Penn State and potentially Oregon's first huge test of the 2025 season, guys. I don't think, Bert, correct me if I'm wrong, Oregon hasn't played anyone ranked yet, right?
I do not believe so.
Okay, so both teams huge test this week.
Their best win right now, I think, would be Oklahoma State.
Okay, so both teams getting tested for the first time today. This weekend. Number 3, Penn State. Number 6, Oregon. Penn State's looked nothing but good and organized, but that's been almost running on air with how their first couple opponents have been. Jay, looking at these two teams, you got Franklin coaching one. You've got Oregon, who had some success last year and narrowly lost a chance to go to the playoff. What do you see as who has a potential advantage? Who has more to prove in this matchup? Do you think, a James Franklin-led Penn State being consistent and not leaving it down to a conference title game at the end? Is there a chance that they could use this as their springboard for an early path to locking themselves in with 1 or 2 games left to a playoff seed? Or do you think that this is more important for Oregon to do the same?
Absolutely. I think Penn State has had, even more so than Oregon, has had a lot of hype going into the offseason. Some people even picking them as the number 1 team in the country, just with their experience and returning quarterback with Drew Aller. I think that Franklin has had a massive reputation of just blowing it in the big games. So I think this is a huge opportunity for Penn State to kind of just turn the narrative and show that they can show up in the big moments. They have a little bit of a clutch bone. And if they lose this game, it's just going to be more of the same Penn State jokes about just not clutch. They can only beat up on bottom feeders in the Big Ten and go 10-2 yearly, but never be have that next step to be a truly great program. And with Oregon, it's just still, it's more proving kind of almost in a similar thing, like another team that a lot of people say they can never just hit that next step to win a national title. The whole joke with Oregon is that they've never won a natty. So I think they're in a very similar spot of proving you can win the big games and truly take that next step to be true national title contenders.
Yeah, no, fair points all around. I think I definitely think there's a little more pressure on Penn State with how easy they're. I think they've had one of their easiest front half of their schedules in a while. This will be their first test, but yeah, I think definitely of either coach, I think Franklin's been on the hot seat because he's had this level of talent and success everywhere except for on these top 10 matchups, and when it comes down to playoff time or conference championship time for a longer period of time. So I feel like the string on his leash is getting shorter and shorter by every day because of this history of just not being able to get it across the 1 yard line, when it matters most, of just, okay, is this going to be another 10-2, or is this going to be, an 11-1 or an undefeated season that gives us our best shot at winning a national championship, especially now with the expanded playoff. So moving onward, a couple of other matchups this week. You look at Tennessee and Mississippi State. Tennessee, bad taste in their mouth, especially for their kicker after that narrow loss to Georgia 2 weeks ago in one of the best games of the year, might even go down as the best game of the year, quite honestly. And look, Tennessee still ranked at 15th. Honestly, was expecting them to hang it a little bit higher than that with how close that game was. But hey, if you don't miss a 37 or 40-yard field goal, you're probably ranked number 3 or number 2 right now. So there is an argument to be made there. Mississippi State coming off a ranked win against Arizona State, one of their first in a while, and a lot of good talent on that offense to play with as well, and a defense that can make a lot of explosive plays and timely turnovers when they are clicking. So when you look at this matchup, who has more to prove here? I'll start with Bert and I'll go to you, Jay. Who has more to prove here? A Tennessee who needs to show they can get a quality conference win and keep themselves ranked and back on the path to hopefully either working their way back into a conference championship if someone like Georgia stumbles, or do you think it's going to be Mississippi State who needs to prove themselves they can do it again with another ranked win and keep the ball rolling towards getting into the upper echelon of the SEC after being in the dark for so many years?
So for me, I as much as I hate to say it, I think it's Tennessee in terms of who has more to prove. Mississippi State has already proven a lot. Just coming from 2 wins, beating a team that went to the college football playoff last year. I think Mississippi State, from a prove-it standpoint, has already proven a lot this season. Tennessee, on the other hand, is a completely different animal. Tennessee is looking to compete for a national championship. And just from a matchup perspective, I think the one area that Mississippi State still needs to improve a lot on is up front, defensive line, offensive line. And frankly, I think Tennessee has one of the best defensive lines in the country. So I think, unfortunately for my fan base, I think this one is likely going to slip away from us. And this is going to kind of launch Tennessee into having a real successful season. But the game is in Starkville. Mississippi State is, I can tell you right now, just from looking at their Twitter and having a pretty good sense of where my fan base is on this game, they're going to make it difficult for Tennessee. I think their quarterback, this will be the first time he's been in a real hostile environment on the road in the SEC. So never say never, but I think the stereotypical saying of football games are won up front is going to win out in this one.
In between the trenches. Okay, Jay, what's your thought here? Who has more pressure in this matchup? Tennessee to deliver or Mississippi State to either keep it close or potentially get the big upset?
I'd agree. I'm kind of with Bert on this one. Pretty similar reasons. I think it's Josh Heupel in Tennessee. I think I just think the expectations are significantly different between the two teams. One's going for national titles, and one is, I think, Mississippi State, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, fan base understands there's going to be a pretty significant build going on here.
Absolutely. And I think if you were to ask a Mississippi State fan, at the beginning of the season, hey, you're going to be 4-0 going into the Tennessee game, they would have most likely said you're crazy.
Jeff Levy inherited a half-eaten sandwich and a used condom, and they told him to go win some football games. So, I honestly, Arizona State had people already over the moon. I don't think they're expecting Jeff Levy to go out there now and beat Tennessee. I like what they're doing down in Starkville, but I just think Tennessee they're just a very complete team, especially on offense right now. They got wide receivers, they can catch anything.
I will say one important note, just to play devil's advocate and to present my team in a little more light.
Sir, you beat the Devils, and you should be advocating for the Bulldogs. Just want to point that out.
I will say I'm really curious to see how Arizona State attacks Mississippi State, especially in the pass game. Mississippi State has some really good corners and really good secondary players. So I think we're really going to get a chance to see how good that Tennessee passing attack is against Mississippi State. And I think we're really going to get a sense of, is Tennessee capable of competing with the higher echelon of teams such as Penn State, Oregon, Georgia. Granted, they were right there against Georgia too. So,
to be fair, going back to kind of those expectations, I think Tennessee, I think the pressure is more on Heupel because it's not only if they can beat Mississippi State, it's how they beat Mississippi State. Tennessee expects to walk into Starkville and blow out Mississippi State. So I'd honestly consider it a win if Mississippi State can keep this game close, because I guarantee you that's not what the boys up in Rocky Top are expecting out of this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, good points all around, guys. I'm excited to watch that matchup. Another one I'm excited to watch, but also stressed death, is going to be the A&M Auburn matchup at 2:30 come Saturday. That is a game that I think has a ton of pressure on an Aggie team fresh off a win against Notre Dame, but also going to be a little bit sleepy coming off of the bye week. My initial take on it is I think A&M needs two things to win. Number one, most important, their defense has to be able to stop anything other than a nosebleed, which they really couldn't even do that against Notre Dame. Part of that was exaggerated with the fact that they had a special teams error that cost a touchdown, so they really gave up 33 points. But for an Aggie defense of last year, and really any kind of Elko defense, that's inexcusable. And I think the heart of it, and Jay, I want your opinion on this later as well, I think the heart of it comes with the miscues on the front seven. I actually think the secondary got a little bit better compared to what it was last year. This is a secondary that Mike Elko literally said, we cannot run zone coverage. Like since the LSU game, or actually since halfway through the season, they were running man across the board, and we wondered why the defensive coordinator was just sending 7 all the time. And we're like what is the point? Like we're leaving 1-on-1 across the board. Apparently we were incapable of playing zone. I don't know how you can be a Division I SEC football game and only be able to play man. I don't know what the defensive IQ level of that team was last year. I don't know if everyone just wanted to just either point at one guy and said, you're mine, and everyone else is just going ooga booga and going after the quarterback and sometimes not getting home. I don't know what was going on there. But the main difference between this year and last year, I think the secondary has a little bit better, football IQ, but the front seven has fallen off dramatically, especially in their run fits. Their ability to set edges is way, way, way down the tubes. They got to clean that up really, really quickly. But even their linebacker fits between the tackles. I mean, Torian York, I really since the South Carolina game of last year, I've seen a decrease in his level of play. He's still an exceptional linebacker, but I don't know if it's more how he's working in tandem with the other linebackers around him to fit, especially in odd fronts or 4-2-5 scenarios or 4-4 stack scenarios. There just seems to be some kind of miscue between your front end fitter and the guy scraping over the top doing this kind of action, kind of almost like a rock and roll as you go with any kind of a double middle linebacker fit process for run plays. There's something off there dramatically. There was so many times all Jeremiah Love had to do against Notre Dame was simply be patient on a wide zone. And either the edge was just going to be blown wide open, and he's just going to run around everybody, or some gaping hole in the middle will be wide open, and Torian York is filling the C gap, and the A's wide open, and the other guy's nowhere to be found. So now that I'm ranting, and there's the whole segment Bert came up with. This is kind of a little bit of that. When you look at Auburn, they've got some explosive wide receivers, and they can still run the ball to some effective level. Maybe not as good as a Jeremiah Love with Notre Dame, but they're still a threat. And I think A&M's front seven especially is going to be the key to this game, and especially as long as you can run the ball on the offensive side. I think this entire offense, as we saw last year to some extent, obviously that offense was not as catered to what Marcel Reed can do as a dual threat, but I think the heart of this offense is this. Talked about it last week. If you can run the ball with Le'Veon Moss specifically, to the point that you can force 7 in the box and you're getting second-level blocking from your offensive line, your H-backs, your tight ends, and you can force them into cover 3, all of Colin Klein's route trees are based off of cover 3 beaters, right? You're either going to go in the flats, you're going to stack corners vertically, you're going to attack seam routes when they leave them open, and you can set them up that way, especially if Marcel Reed can read off of outside linebackers. There's a lot of things we'll see Colin Klein do, such as actions off of jet motion, jet action. You'll see H-back pulls and guard tackle combos, all kinds of great stuff. But what it has in common across the board is it has to be playing off of a working run game. It doesn't have to be an explosive run game, because we didn't see that in the first matchup against Notre Dame. We saw just Le'Veon Moss just churning out 4 and 4.5 yards per carry and just constantly being a threat to break out. So my monologue ends with this question, and I'll start with Jay, and then we'll go to Bert. When you look at this matchup, who has more pressure for the Texas A&M side of the ball? Do you think it's the defense, like I think, or do you think it's the offense to deliver just a consistent flow of offense and keep our defense off the field, because maybe there is no hope for this defense to be a traditional Mike Elko defense?
I think the answer is pretty clear. I think it is the defense. overall. I think the offense does have its stuff to prove, but defense, can you stop the run? Like I think that's what it comes down to. Jackson Arnold, you look what he did. Jackson Arnold on the Auburn offense against Baylor, all run. If they think they can run on you all day, they'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
But as far as the offense goes, though, with A&M, I think I would expect to see them lean on the run a little more in this game. Because if they do think that A&M's defense is going to have those deficiencies, I think Auburn last week used a very quick and speedy personnel against that Oklahoma offensive line to kind of slow down John Mateer and the whole John Mateer show over there. But I think A&M's offensive line is much bigger and much more experienced than OU's, and I think our backs are better than what OU has, to be quite frank. I think our offensive line can push them around a little bit, and I think we can really lean on our pretty deep, like, stable of backs to really grind down that clock. And just if our defense can't stop a nosebleed, then best way to stop Auburn's offense is by keeping it off the field in the first place.
Bert, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jay nailed it. I have a lot of faith in A&M's offense right now. And piggybacking, talking about the run game, you forget Marcel Reed has shown that he's willing to run the football too. He did a lot with Notre Dame, showing that as well. I think we talked about that last episode. If I'm not mistaken, if A&M's defense can find a way to get some stops, I think there's no reason why A&M shouldn't win this game. It's in College Station. Yeah. I have a lot of faith that A&M comes out on top of this one.
Well, at least one of us does. But you're right. There is a lot of. This is a must win for A&M. You have to take care of business, especially at home, especially with the big win you had last week. And we know that we now have all the Catholics of Notre Dame on our rooting for us, because us winning out is their only hope at getting into a playoff. So, I mean, I'll take anyone that can continue to push positive vibes towards our area, because with every Aggie win, the pressure gets more and more, and the more I want to pull my hair out. So it's a good kind of pressure to have. But with high expectations comes more potential for heartbreak. And if you look at this is a stereotypical, like, perfect time for A&M to get beaten by a Cinderella story. As much as I don't want to happen, this is where A&M decides if they're going to be an 8-4 team or if they're going to be a 10-2 or better team. Can you take care of business, especially at home, against people you have no business losing to? They could not do that against a very easy back half of the schedule last year, losing to South Carolina, losing to this very team of Auburn in double overtime in a game that they had no business even giving up that many points when they had a better defense. And then, of course, the TU game, which that one was going to be tight no matter how good either team was. But every game leading up to that should have been a win, and that was where the team fell short. So when you look at this, Jay, to just close on, is there any other thoughts you have on this before we pivot to maybe Notre Dame and Arkansas?
I will say I do have – it's Mike Elko. If I'm going to trust a man to shore up a defense as the season goes on, I'd trust him to do it. And I also think that bye week could not have come at a better time. If we wouldn't have had our bye week after that Notre Dame win, I think you'd see something very similar to that South Carolina loss after a big win versus LSU at home at Kyle Field. I think that bye week will do dividends at allowing them to kind of settle down that team, to refocus and take on Auburn. But yeah, that's about all I got for that.
Yeah, and I do agree with you in the fact that if anyone could turn around a defense quickly, it would be Mike Elko compared to any of our other coaches. And look, I've been on record saying this because of how talented I know he is, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I've never wanted another coach to work as much as I do Mike Elko. I think he runs the team the right way. He eliminates drama internally, unlike coaches of the past. He runs a solid program. He's a defensive-minded guy, and his defenses, especially prior to his head coaching role, have always been phenomenal. Now that he has to delegate some of those defensive responsibilities to, I think it's Blake Shapins is the name for the defensive coordinator. Now the question is, can you orchestrate a good defense with less hands on it? Can you delegate to the right guy? Is your defensive coordinator right now the right guy to take your defensive knowledge and multiply it? That's it. That's a very important thing to watch, especially since defense is Mike Elko's bread and butter.
We'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off what Bert said. Yeah, Marcel Reed can run, but for the love of God, that dude needs to learn how to slide. He cannot be running like Cam Newton out there. That man is 180-something pounds. Some of those shots, I swear, every time that man gets popped, I sit there and about hop out of my seat because I'm like, he's going to die.
Yeah.
He cannot keep taking shots like that.
I'm going to make one more point off of Jay's. A&M has shown that they have a pair of really explosive receivers. If you can't get them the ball, you are going to shut down the offense. And so I understand what we're talking about with Marcel Reed running the ball and all that, but it is an extra emphasis on you have got to find a way to protect him better. There's no way around it. Your offense will go down the tank and you will lose this game if you cannot protect Marcel Reed.
I would argue you have to be able to run the ball with Le'Veon Moss before anything. If Le'Veon Moss is able to run by himself without necessarily always having to have the threat of Marcel Reed on an option or anything like that, then I think the wheels are running at that point because it opens everything up. Like I talked about with their passing game, all of the route trees, not all of them, but everything that we saw that was explosive, right, against Notre Dame, it was all about forcing them into cover 3 because of the threat of Le'Veon Moss specifically, especially early in the game. There was not a ton of action that Marcel was keeping the ball and trying to force action himself. It was all on, we have to set up Le'Veon Moss, get him going. He doesn't have to break out for a 20-yard run, but you've got to continue to get to the second level in 4 and 4.5-yard runs and continue to force a 7-man front, which then most of the time results in cover 3 with either a bail, rock and rolling safeties, or bump and run corners, stuff like that. When you can get him in that scenario and force a single high safety, especially when you consider this offense does not have an X receiver that is a 50-50 ball guy because Jerome Miles got hurt before the season ever got started. You're playing with two really quick, almost, one of them, KC can be a true wideout if he wants to, but he's not a guy that's necessarily always creating separation with his body, right? He's a speedster. He's an excellent route runner. And then with Craver, he is a slot guy. He's a true slot guy that is going to beat you with speed. He can beat you vertical, but you don't have a true big body that you can throw at any point of the field and he can use separation. So with that comes the fact that you're going to win one-on-one by spreading people out and beating them vertically or in the flats off of jet motion or stuff like that. So I think to get both of those guys going, you have to be able to run the ball efficiently and quickly. Otherwise, you'll see what happened with South Carolina and Auburn, right? Especially South Carolina. That was a terrible game for that offense. And it started with Le'Veon Moss being taken out of the game early, right? And all of a sudden, we can't run the ball. Amari Daniels is a good back, but he doesn't get to the second level off of contact like Le'Veon Moss does. And even with Marcel Reed trying to use his legs, the defense was able to play off of it and only keep 6 man in the box or less and stop the run. So I'll stop rambling at that. I know this is the Aggie segment where we always take about 10 or 15 more minutes than we usually need to, but this is a very interesting matchup. And like we talked about, this is one that A&M needs to take care of business and do so quickly. If you let a team like Auburn, especially with some of the explosive receivers they have, hang around for too long, you could find yourself getting snake bit really, really quickly. So this will be an interesting one. And by interesting, I mean entirely stressful for me, most likely, to watch. So pivoting to one of our final matchups to discuss here. This one is going to be more interesting than I thought it would be in regards to the Notre Dame-Arkansas matchup. Yes, Arkansas is coming off of a loss to Memphis, right? That is a bit of an issue. That being said, when we're looking at the Notre Dame-Arkansas matchup, this is one of those that absolutely puts all the pressure on Notre Dame. And this is an Arkansas team that, at least offensively, is talented enough to go and smack anybody in the mouth. But if Notre Dame loses to Arkansas, this is a death penalty for their playoff bid. They do not have any strength of schedule left. And look, Arkansas does not count as a strength of schedule win at this moment. If they go knock off someone big in conference, then maybe. But for the sake of now, they are not somebody that this would be considered a quality loss that would keep them in the bid. And my guess is this will be Bert's segment, but somehow the AP top 25 would find a way to keep them ranked, even if they lost to them. But that's where this.
But
we've seen worse. Do you think Illinois is going to be ranked? Actually, they still are. I think they're 19th or something. Yeah. So
we'll get there.
Why not? We'll get there. So when we look at this matchup, do you think all the pressure's on Notre Dame to once again take care of business, or do you think it's on Arkansas to, hey, this is the easiest way for you to bounce back and show you guys that Memphis loss was just a fluke?
Well, I mean, I would like to say there's equal pressure. Sam Pittman has shown multiple times where he's able to go in and knock off teams that are more talented than theirs. I mean, he's done it against Texas. He's done it against Tennessee.
Texas A&M,
exactly. This is a very sneaky game for Notre Dame. It's in Arkansas. It's in an environment that Notre Dame usually isn't accustomed to playing in the SEC. It is very sneaky. And it's essentially a death sentence for Sam Pittman's job or a death sentence for Notre Dame's playoff hopes. So there's a lot riding on this game when, initially at first glance, you're not really seeing it.
Jay, any thoughts as we close out week 5 here?
I just don't see Arkansas's defense being able to hang, to be perfectly honest. Taylor Green is a one-man nuclear weapon out there, but he can put up 1 billion yards. But I think Notre Dame's offense has shown to be quite explosive as well, and they have not the greatest defense on planet Earth, but it's not quite like Arkansas's, where in crunch time they allow the quarterback from Memphis to get 10 yards even though they had him for a sack. So dragging half the team with it. So unless CJ Carr and they just get really discombobulated down there at Hog Stadium, I just see Notre Dame's defense getting a few stops that make the difference in the game and being able to kind of just pull away from Arkansas. And I don't see Arkansas being able to make those stops when they really need it, especially against CJ Carr being able to throw the ball, but they also have Jeremiah Love and Price. I just don't see them stopping that very well, and they can't even stop Memphis.
That's a true statement. And guys, we almost left without talking about this matchup in depth. LSU, Ole Miss, number 4, number 13. Another one of the candidates for game of the week. Man, this is a loaded matchup in many ways. Okay, so Bert, I'll let you start with this one. What is your general analysis of this game and advantages and disadvantages? Will LSU be able to beat a big team to where their starting quarterback knows to throw to the right colored jerseys, unlike DJ Lagway at Florida?
So this matchup is really intriguing to me. LSU started the season off with a win against Clemson, which has aged terribly. Clemson is not the team everybody expected them to be, and so is LSU deserving of the current ranking that they have? I don't know. I can say that we talked about this last week as well. That defense is legit. The secondary is much improved from a season ago. Again, Harold Perkins playing an actual football game. Like he's back. He's actually playing football again. That is going to be an interesting matchup to see Ole Miss and their high-powered offense with Lane Kiffin. I'm curious to see how Ole Miss reacts to that, because Ole Miss has not been necessarily tested. I think their best 2 games that they've played right now is Arkansas and Kentucky, and at times we've seen inconsistencies from their quarterbacks, throwing a lot of interceptions. I think that sets up well for LSU. However, again, is that secondary necessarily tested for LSU? I don't know.
Yeah, especially after Clemson couldn't even put up more than 14 against Syracuse in the first half.
Exactly. So I don't know how this game's going to go per se, especially when it comes to the outtake. For whatever reason, I have a feeling that the winner of this game is going to get a very high ranking, and they might not necessarily be deserving of it. But yeah, it's going to be a good game regardless.
No, I agree. Jay, any thoughts on this matchup when you look at two really highly ranked teams, and I think someone's going to drop at least 10 spots as a result of it?
I would argue that Ole Miss's defense has been tested through Archie with Taylor Green playing out of his mind like that. They were able to slow him down enough to come through and pull with that game. So if LSU does not develop an offense, I mean, hell, last week you were given 5 turnovers and you could generate, 13 offensive points?
Yeah.
One of them was a defensive score. So 13 points with 5 turnovers, and you got to go into Vaught Hemingway and play Ole Miss at home. If they don't develop an offense, I think Ole Miss has a decent enough defense if they don't come up with an offense to hold them back, and I don't think LSU's defense is going to be able to hold them forever.
I mean, Ole Miss's defense did give up 35 points to Arkansas in week 3. So I don't know how much legitimate faith we can really put in that Rebel defense.
Well, no, Jay was right. They were tested. They just tested and failed. So, I mean,
that's fair.
My point, I guess,
maybe we know what we got.
They were able to get the stops against a team like that to win, and I think Arkansas's offense at this point, at least this point in the year, has been far better than LSU's, is kind of my point. So I think it's a classic battle of which one's going to matter more in this game, Ole Miss's offense or LSU's defense.
Agreed.
So good point. And at this point, with Ole Miss giving up 35 to Arkansas, I mean, you would think at least LSU's offense could score 17.
Well, shit. How'd they do against who'd they play? Which of the Louisiana? Was it Lafayette they played? They couldn't even
Southeastern Louisiana. They put up 56 last week.
Or was it Lafayette? Oh, South. Wow.
Which one?
Well, I mean, that's running on air.
They played one of the other ones, didn't they?
LSU's played Florida, Clemson, Southeastern Louisiana.
Am I missing one? I think I'm missing.
You are.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
If I'm remembering correctly, they didn't look too hot against that first one. And I mean, Southeastern Louisiana, aren't they an FCS team?
No, we are mistaken. LSU has a bye somewhere in there.
Okay.
So who was the team that they played outside of LSU and Clemson?
Southeastern Louisiana.
Sorry, Florida and Clemson. Sorry, Southeastern Louisiana. And they put up how much against those guys?
56.
Okay, fantastic. You put up 56 against
Southeastern
Louisiana Penitentiary Junior College.
Sometimes those kinds of games have a tendency to instill a little more confidence in your offense and get things clicking a little bit more. And I mean, let's not forget, like, everybody was talking about Garrett Nussmeier being a Heisman Trophy candidate at the beginning of the season. So I think this will really be LSU's first test running on a legitimate team. So let's see what happens.
I just think this game will have. I think this game will have the biggest consequences if that LSU offense doesn't come alive. If they do come alive, I think they can pull through with this game pretty handily. But if that LSU offense continues to have those same struggles, I think this could be a game that kind of gets out of their hands pretty fast.
No, I agree. I think the consequences are going to be either we have the Nuss Bus propaganda reviving itself since October of last year, or Brian Kelly is once again going to assault a journalist verbally and maybe even physically after the game when someone asks why they only put up 13 points in an entire game. So it's going to be one of those two things. Either way, the consequences will somehow affect me. I'll have to see some delusional LSU fans on Twitter just going crazy. So, okay, wrapping this up, let's talk about the latest Bert Johnson segment of referring to the AP polling as a terrorist organization. Bert, please take it away with your latest complaints of the AP Top 25 delusionalism.
Thank you for that glorious introduction, Cole. So we'll just start off naming a couple I see off the bat here. So Ohio State, number 1. I think we're all in agreement. That's fair. Miami at number 2 is a little bit interesting to me. Again, I look at that Notre Dame game, and that's really their only win that warrants this high ranking. I know this is going a little bit against the grain, but their other 2 wins are against USF, a Group of 5 team not in the top 25, and Florida, who's looking for a new coach. So I don't know if this necessarily warrants a number 2 ranking, especially like teams like Georgia, who have gotten a really good win against Tennessee. I don't know. I might be making a mountain out of a molehill in regards to that ranking, but I don't know. Miami, in my opinion, is really going to get tested in the later half of their season when they play teams like Florida State and who else? Maybe like Syracuse. Georgia Tech maybe as well. Penn State at 3 seems fine to me. LSU at 4, possibly a little bit high, but as we talked about, I think that Clemson game is still kind of fresh on everybody's minds. Oregon is an interesting one as well. I could potentially see them moving up a little bit higher, given how they've won some of their games. Oklahoma at 7, up 4 slots this week. That's interesting, considering it was a close game against Auburn. That Michigan game is I think is still fresh on everybody's mind, so there might be a bias in that one. I don't necessarily think Michigan is such a great team. I know Bryce Underwood looks legit, but I don't know. I could easily move Oklahoma back similar to what they were ranked last week. Florida State at 8 seems fair to me. A&M at 9 seems fair. Texas at 10 is another interesting one. I don't necessarily think that Texas has proven that they deserve a top 10 slot quite yet. They've struggled against teams like UTSA, and they haven't beaten really anybody that warrants that ranking quite yet. So I can understand why you have them highly ranked, because they did play Ohio State relatively close in Columbus. But again, how much of that ranking is simply the fact that they're Texas and they have that orange Longhorn in the logo? Indiana.
No, Bert, let me just stop you there for a minute. I agree with that wholeheartedly. They're giving a lot of weight to a quality loss, even if you want to call it that. And they've done nothing but beat up on, little schools like Southwestern, Louisiana Penitentiary Junior College, Baptist Central ever since. And outside of that, they're not going to play anybody until you get to week 7 against OU, which that will be a very important game. And I think because of the rivalry alone, it will be close. But, they have a bye this week, I believe. Either that or they're not playing anybody, worth anything. Then they play Florida week 6, which right now, the final score will probably be 10-3 with how both defenses play and how both offenses play. But that's not going to be anything that should boost themselves in the AP top 25 rankings, but it probably will. So then you're going until, from week 1 all the way until week 7 until you relatively play anyone worth a crap again. So that is a frustrating thing. This Texas team is someone we're watching very closely, but we may not get a lot of proven product until it comes to the very, very high stakes game of OU in Texas. So with that said, please continue.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Go ahead, Dave.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Last time I checked, the AP rankings were not power rankings.
They are not.
Texas just has not. I know I'm an Aggie, so the annual shit on the Longhorn thing, but just taking off my maroon tinted glasses, I don't see how you can look at Texas's body of work and their resume and really tell me there aren't 25 other teams that have a better resume than Texas at this point. Could they improve down the road and come back up? Sure, but I think, especially in the AP poll in general, there's way too much placed on that logo and potential versus that actual body of work. And I think that's Texas at 10.
this is something we can talk about similarly with Notre Dame. I'll just skip to them ranked at 22 while we're on the subject. It's a very similar situation with Notre Dame where a 1-2 Notre Dame is getting a lot of love simply because of the logo and the name.
Yeah.
I don't see a whole lot of resume or wins or accolades to warrant that ranking as opposed to some other teams that aren't receiving votes. So continuing, Indiana up 8 slots, up to 11. I have no problem with that. Besides, I believe their schedule is a much different schedule than a year ago.
They got to play, I think Ohio State, one of them, I think, maybe Oregon. They have two. Last time I checked, they got 2 solid games.
Yeah, which will be definitely different than last year where they essentially escaped by. So Indiana is going to get a chance to.
Yeah, I think they're off this week. Ranking. They play Houston the week after.
All right. Well, regardless, I think Indiana's still going to get a chance to prove whether they deserve that 11 ranking. But at least for right now, I think that 11 ranking is justified. Texas Tech at 12. That's an interesting one. They did beat Utah. That's really the only win that they have that's under their belt. That's fine. I don't see a whole lot of teams.
And it wasn't a close one either. I mean, it was like a defensive battle for a while, but then they blew them out of the water. So that was a weird result there.
Ole Miss at 13. I don't have a problem with that. Actually, wait, I do have a problem with that. So, yeah, again.
Well, yeah, because they're Ole Miss, but aside from that.
Well, no.
Well, again, what is justifying this 13 ranking? They struggled against Kentucky. They struggled against Arkansas. Their best win right now is currently against Tulane, and they did blow them out. I believe it was like 56-10. But again, it's Tulane. I'm not sure I'm willing to put Ole Miss at 13 quite yet. Now, granted, depending on how this weekend goes, I think they can justify that ranking. Iowa State at 14. I don't have a problem with that. Tennessee 15. Georgia Tech 16. Alabama is another one that we talk about, that logo, at 17. Vanderbilt at 18 I think is fair. Slowly making progress.
Shoot, I'd say they're too low.
Scary times.
Like, you look at, say like Georgia Tech or Vandy's logo, and you slap Texas or Ole Miss's logo on those resumes, how high would they be?
Fair. Very
the
fair.
Sun.
I'd argue Vandy's probably got a top 12 resume.
They'd be higher than Snoop Dogg on 420. Okay, they'd be high.
No, I tend to agree with Jay here. Vandy has wins over South Carolina. They have wins over. The issue with South Carolina becomes is they're now 0-2 in SEC play. So that win against South Carolina, even though South Carolina was highly ranked coming into this season, I don't know if that's an aged well win. Virginia Tech is their other win, which is meh. I mean, that's a middle of the road ACC. That's a middle of the road ACC team traditionally, and like
they're going to end up being bottom of the barrel.
So
the Virginia Tech program is.
I think the beautiful thing about Vanderbilt is, again, I think having them ranked is awesome. Typically, they are not a ranked team. Again, I don't know if their resume necessarily allows them to go any higher at the moment. Now, granted,
I guess my point is going back to kind of like the purpose of like the AP poll being a ranking system. I would rather have Georgia Tech or Vandy in the place of Texas or Ole Miss, because if you look at those resumes, they're even weaker.
And that's fair.
Yeah, Ole Miss has no ranked wins, and Texas has
None.
3 wins against Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and friends, and a loss to real football team. So
yeah, and I guess just to piggyback off your point, all of these teams that we have mentioned are going to get a chance later on to prove that ranking. I look at teams like Notre Dame,
with the exception of Notre Dame. Yeah,
Notre Dame. They're
going to beat up on an orphanage again, and then
I
somehow sneak away in the playoff.
I understand. We talked about this last week with Notre Dame, but the fact that they started the season out 0-2 and they slid all the way back to 24. Notre Dame is just going to continue to win games against nobody. They're going to win. They're going to play games against FCS teams, and they will go 9-10 wins for the remainder of the season. And if you want to move them up at that point, I mean, by all means do it. But again, you have teams that are actually playing other schools later on in the season. So go ahead and rank them higher. And allow them to get some publicity.
I think there's no. I think just speculating about 8 weeks from now. I think there's no justification for putting Notre Dame in the college football playoff unless that USC team is ranked at the time that they play them and potentially beat them. If they are unranked at the time that they play them and beat them, and no one else on their schedule most likely will be ranked that we know of currently, that maybe by some miracle they beat Arkansas and then they go run the table with the rest of their schedule in the SEC. Wilder things have happened. But I think hopefully for once on God's green earth, if everyone else they beat is unranked or potentially even lose to anyone else, they have to be left off of the college football playoff, even if they had quality losses on the front end. You can't reward this year after year after year at the stake and cost of other teams who maybe are 9-3 even, right? That have played a much tougher strength of schedule and will have a better strength of record than any Notre Dame team you get from the rest of the season. With that being said, please, Bert, move on. I've stopped you enough.
Kohl, what you're forgetting, though, if Notre Dame runs the table, though, they got a shot at that
they're 100%
championship they got, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The independent conference.
Once again, another way they don't have to prove themselves, another way they can keep their guys healthier and fresher going into the playoffs. No one's benefited from the playoff system more than Notre Dame. No one.
I was about to say, Jay, you should have been here last week. I feel like that Notre Dame talk would have been even better. All right, continuing. Coming at you fast. 19, Michigan. No way. Don't deserve it. 0 wins that justify that. 20, Missouri. I think that's a fair ranking. USC is 21. I don't know where that is coming from. They did beat Michigan State, I see. So there might be some justification from a historical standpoint, beating up on some middle to higher teams of the Big Ten there.
I mean, Michigan State had a bigger fall off than Mississippi State after their coach died. Okay, let's just keep that in mind. That Michigan State win means nothing to me right now.
That's fair, but looking at some of these other teams in here, especially like Michigan with nothing on their resume, I would put USC over Michigan. So, again,
the standards have never been lower.
The subjectivity is definitely starting to play into factor as we get lower in the rankings. 22, Notre Dame, already talked about them. 23, Illinois down 14 spots.
Also light on fire.
Again, I don't understand why Illinois is ranked. They have a win over Duke, and that's it. And especially after losing the way they did to Indiana, zero reason for why they should continually be ranked. Especially looking at some of these other teams.
I would put TCU, who beat a team whose head coach is the football equivalent now of Leonardo DiCaprio in regards to his dating life. I would put them ahead of both of these teams right now, every day, all the way, every week, like 365. I don't understand how Illinois gets to be ranked after that big of a blowout. I don't care if it was a ranked matchup. It wasn't even close.
So just to wrap up real quick and then kind of circle back to Illinois. 24 TCU. They beat SMU. Okay, SMU was a playoff team last year. Then 25 BYU. I don't understand why they're ranked. So I look at these other teams receiving votes. You have Auburn as the number 26 team and Mississippi State as the number 27 team. Let's not forget, Auburn really got cheated with that no call against Oklahoma.
There were
You're telling
calls.
You are telling me that Oklahoma is ranked 7th and they're dropping Auburn all the way out of the top 25 completely.
Yeah, Auburn played a closer game than Illinois. Auburn had a better strength of record than Illinois, yet Auburn's the one that pays the bigger price just because they were more accurately ranked than Illinois.
Baylor was a team receiving votes last weekend. Even Arizona State is on here. Arizona State beat Baylor by 3 points. Arizona State is sitting here receiving votes, and Auburn beat that Baylor team. So at home. So I don't understand why Auburn completely dropped out the way they did. Another thing I want to mention, and this will sound homer, but Mississippi State's 4-0. I did some research,
and they have a ranked win.
And they have a ranked win against Arizona State, who is receiving votes. The last time an SEC school was 4-0 and was left out of the top 25 was 2013. So, in other words, a decade. I think that's a bit ridiculous. Correct me if I'm wrong there, fellas.
I think he got that logo bias hard at play. I think a lot of it comes down to Illinois had a bunch of preseason hype, and I think it's just people they're not looking at the resume. They're looking at the potential. Oh, they have a lot of returning starters at Illinois. There's a lot of returning starters, so that means they're going to be good, regardless of what the actual resume looks like. Arizona State's got a better. Arizona State has a better resume. Baylor's got a better resume. Mississippi State's got a better resume, and I think Auburn even has a better resume. And to see Illinois still ranked despite playing their biggest win's Duke. You beat Duke. Good job. You take away the bias of kind of those preseason expectations. I don't see how you can justify having those other teams on the outside looking in while having them still ranked like that.
I agree.
They're just covering their rear end. They're covering their rear end like someone who didn't study for a test, and it looks like it because – when we've seen other teams that were ranked that high, they get blown out by 50 or more, they plummet, right? This is just AP voters covering their own rear ends, and it's at the sacrifice of programs who have earned the right to be ranked at this point, such as an Auburn who had a front-loaded schedule with a lot of quality teams, well, especially with the matchup against against OU. And then you've got other people like Mississippi State that are 4-0. They absolutely should be in there over in Illinois and arguably over in Notre Dame at the moment. Look, it's not going to hurt that bad for Notre Dame to be unranked because they still have a massive following. They're like the Cowboys of college football. They're going to be one of the most popular teams in football, and they're going to not have as much consequences or less hype around them or less following around them for being unranked as much as you would get the benefits to a program of like Mississippi State getting that ranking, especially after they've rightfully earned it, right? So with Illinois, I understand that they get some benefit from being ranked, but they should not, especially after their best win before that was Duke, right? And then you go and get blown out by 50. Other programs would be the meme of the week for A&M losing to Appalachian State narrowly was the meme for years. It took us 2 years to forget that, and I'm not going to forget that. Unfortunately, I still don't sleep at night because of that game. And we plummeted way more for a stupid loss similar to that. So I think it's AP voters covering their rear ends. It's stupid. Admit you're wrong. Let them drop. Let it be a shock of the week that someone falls out of the top 10 and goes to unranked. That creates drama in itself. And let a Notre Dame battle their way back into being ranked. Let it be a story. But let some of these other schools like Mississippi State and Auburn, who have rightfully earned a strength of record that's deserving of the top 25 to be ranked. You get more benefit from that too, because you're going to have better matchups in these next 2 weeks that those kind of rankings you benefit more of. There's no point in having a ranked Notre Dame to go and take on an unranked Arkansas that just lost to Memphis. But there is a benefit to having Mississippi State and Auburn ranked. I mean, making that A&M game a ranked matchup is important, and it should be a ranked matchup because this is very much the Auburn A&M matchup is very similar to that South Carolina A&M matchup of last year, right? The way it's painted very much undervalues the currently lesser ranked team, and I definitely think it's going to be a closer game than what the current AP voters are doing after they sniff a line of cocaine.
So, just to summarize my general feeling about this AP poll, better than last week, but there's still some things we need to work on. And I will give the AP voters a little bit of credit. This is kind of how the season always starts. There's always teams that play people earlier on in their schedule, and then they get rewarded for that. And some teams that don't play other teams and will load up the front of their schedule with cupcakes. So we're starting to get a clear picture just how these teams should be ranked. I believe a lot of schools are starting to open up conference play. So hopefully we should be narrowing down and getting a little bit of a better poll.
Yep. Hopefully as the weeks progress, we get a clearer picture or at least less delusionalism as we progress. And I think we're week by week ready to get more hearts broken and more crazy things going on because that's college football, and we cannot wait to see it progress in the coming weeks, guys. So thank you guys both for joining us. Jay, thanks for hopping on with us. We really appreciate having you on as a first-time guest. Hopefully we'll have you on in the near future once again. And for those of y'all that made it through this hour and a half debacle, thank you for hanging in there. We appreciate you. Feel free to leave comments on any of our platforms as to what else you guys want us to talk about specific to college football or NFL. We'll talk about NFL soon. Bert and I are still recovering from an 0-3 Texans start and seeing them move the ball as much as I moved from the couch on a Sunday after church. So we'll see if that gets any better or if we're just going to become some other out-of-state fan base because the Cowboys are currently slightly better, but not by much. So we'll come back to the NFL shortly. Thank you guys for hanging with us. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.